What's up, everyone? Just hopping on right now. So, this is week 3 of some of the special lives I've been doing, mostly for Bravado Tech Sales U. So, it's a program, free program that I put out. I was working on it for, I don't know, over 6 months with Bravado, and it's a 5-week self-paced program aimed at helping you get into tech sales. So, you don't need to pay for like these like super expensive boot camps or courses that are out there. Honestly, most of them are like pretty much trash in my experience and not worth the money. So let's see. So today we're going to be going over outbound prospecting, outbound strategy, outbound sequences, how to cold call effectively, social selling. So those are the types of questions that we're going to cover. I want to focus on today. Those are in like the kind of the week 3 section of the Tech Sales U course. But thanks everyone for hopping on. Let's see. And I'm using the desktop streaming here with OBS, which is great. I was waiting for this to get added back. So it looks like we have it. Hopefully you should hear me. I don't know if I see your comments or anything here. We'll give everyone some time to pop in. Let's see. Advice for breaking into cold accounts. Good question. So it's never easy breaking into cold accounts. The answer is going to depend on if you're looking at like SMB or enterprise size accounts. The approach is going to be a little bit different for both. But in general, you want to approach it from multiple angles or multiple stakeholders. You don't want to just like focus on like one person to break in. If you really want to break into a cold account, you need to come at it from multiple angles. So think about different levels of stakeholders: lower level, mid level, and executive level. And then you want to basically align at those different levels. Your approach is going to vary at each of those different levels too. Another good approach that a lot of people don't utilize as often as I think that they should is leveraging referrals. Referrals will help you a ton. Referrals, and then social selling is also pretty powerful nowadays. So getting in front of your customer indirectly can sometimes be really helpful. So if they're active on LinkedIn or if they're active on Twitter, you can try to get in front of them that way instead of just trying emails and phone calls if that's not working. New setup goes crazy. Yeah, I got the OBS stream key set up, so I'm able to use the Sony camera that I have, the A7S III, and then I've got some of these like overlays here, which are kind of funny. Now I feel like a Twitch streamer here. And I'm also really excited about this because I'm recording all of these, and I'm natively recording these live streams. So now the live streams that I'm going to repost on YouTube are going to be much higher quality than the ones that I record natively on TikTok. Thanks for the advice. Love the content. Yeah, appreciate it. And I appreciate the support. If you haven't already checked out Tech Sales U, so that's the course that I have that listed in my bio, the totally free one. I go over some of that stuff in more detail, but the next thing that I'm going to be doing is going into each of those types of skills, in more in depth. So like this course is aimed at people who have like zero background in tech or in tech sales. They want to get in. The goal is to get into a SDR, BDR position, the entry level position. The next level of content that I want to create and it's still going to be free as well, is creating content about like specific sales skills. Like how can you become a better SDR, BDR? How can you get promoted from an SDR, BDR to an AE? How do you get from being a SMB AE to enterprise AE? So those are kind of like the different tiers of courses that I'm going to kind of put out there. How many years should you be in an AE role until you expect to make 300K? Great question. So if you're just starting from being an SDR, BDR at the entry level position, I would say best case probably about 4 years. And again, there's a lot of assumptions here. But if you're a high performing SDR, BDR, you can get promoted within 12 to 18 months, maybe a little bit sooner, to be an SMB AE. From there, you're going to want to put in 1 to 2 years of solid experience, exceeding quota, showing that you have experience closing large complex deals. And then from there, then you can get promoted in some cases straight into an enterprise AE role. Other times there might be a mid-market role in between. So I would say, best case 4 years or so for most people. You're in tech sales. What are your thoughts on getting a comp sci degree? I'm not a fan of like going back to school to get a degree unless your employer is paying for it and you're able to do it part-time. In my opinion, the return on investment just isn't there. Not only are you going to be not working while you're in school, but it's also fairly expensive nowadays. If it's a part-time program that you can do and your employer's paying for it, absolutely. I think it could be a great investment, especially if you want to be a more technical, like if you want to be a sales engineer or solutions architect. That's when having that computer science background could be helpful. Just got put in the outbound sales program. Good experience, but Q4 is rough. Yeah, Q4 is always rough in general, and this year is no exception. Especially this year, a lot of companies are just pulling back budget sooner than they would. And in general, usually for Q4, unless you get something in like before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving, the quarter is pretty much over for the most part. People are already mostly checked out. Budget's already allocated for the rest of the year. So your best opportunity is trying to find stuff for Q1 or Q2 of next year. Is your company making you live near the office? No, yeah, fortunately not. But I am hearing more companies that are starting to do that now. They're kind of moving back from like the hybrid work from home approach, and then they're making people come back in the office. But in general, actually, for a lot of the more senior sales positions, they would always have people work from home anyway. But for BDR, SDRs, that's where I'm seeing more reps being asked to come back to the office or live closer to the office. Did I ever work as an account manager? Yeah, my last role at Amazon was a global account manager. Although it was kind of like a hybrid between account manager, account executive. I managed 2 key accounts, had like a 9-figure quota across both of them. So I've been in that role, and then I've also been in greenfield account executive closing roles. Have I heard of Bentley Systems? No, I haven't heard of Bentley Systems. Be curious to know if they're on RepView or not. What are my thoughts on logistics TMS software sales? I don't have a lot of experience on TMS specifically, but the logistics industry itself, used to work in the trucking industry, and there's definitely a lot of technical debt within that space, a lot of room for optimization. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more growth in that segment. Executives are responding this week. Got a lot of responses prospecting. Yeah, I would imagine there's probably, it could be one reason maybe why some executives are responding are, one, there's pressure on their end to drive change and drive, and to make an impact. So if they haven't been doing too much for the year, they know that there's extra attention being placed on them to make sure that they're actually driving change within the organization. And then the other thing could be they might be already kind of exploring other opportunities, so they're going to be more active on LinkedIn than usual. When's your course come out with Bravado? So it already came out. It launched it. The hard launch, I think, was like 6 weeks ago or something like that. Maybe it was 5 weeks ago. So it's out there right now. It's free. If you haven't checked it out, links in the bio. You're an account manager for banking. How do you pivot? So, in general, if you want to pivot from sales in one industry to software, the best way to pivot is to leverage your prior background. So, if you have experience in banking, I would focus on software companies that are like in the banking space. So, fintechs or software companies that mostly sell to financial services customers. That way, you can leverage your prior background experiences, potentially your connections, and then you could ideally use that as so that way you use it as a stepping stone. So that way you're not just like starting totally from scratch. Like if you were to go from like banking to cybersecurity sales, very little of what you learn is going to carry over unless maybe you end up like focusing on like financial services within the cybersecurity segment. What are my thoughts on a company that's not on RepView? So if they're not on RepView, if they're a smaller company, there is a good chance that they might not be on RepView. So it's all self-reported data, right, on RepView. So you can imagine if the company's only had like 10 sales reps or whatever, they're early stage startup, there's a high chance there might not be any reviews on RepView. So, in general, if you're like if you're early in your sales career, I tend to tell people to avoid super small companies because the super small startups, when you're early, they kind of expect you to know what to do to hit the ground running. And if you don't, you're potentially going to struggle because you're not going to get the same level of like coaching and mentorship that you would at a bigger company. Love the jacket. Thanks. Yeah, picked it up from Amazon. It was only like $60. Ended up going to a Young Gravy concert, so I figured I needed to kind of get into the 90s attire. Is it better to take a job at a worse company, but essentially getting 3 promotions and more money? Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about how much you get paid, right? So don't worry about like a title downgrade or a company downgrade or anything like that. Um, it doesn't make like prestige only goes like so far. Like I mean, that's why I left Google, for example. When I joined Google, it was like 150K, 160K OTE with like the stock, which wasn't great, but I was excited for the opportunity to join Google. And but then I got an offer at a fintech startup like a little over a year and a half into the role, and it was going to be double the OTE. And so even though Google's much more prestigious name, um, we're in this role for the most part to make money, right? So to me, that kind of sounds like a no-brainer. Company hasn't done layoffs yet, but they feel like they're coming. How do you stand out as a BDR since we can't do? So the way that you stand out is you want to be a top performer and make sure that you're like working closely, with your management, right? Your management ultimately are going to be the one who's going to decide like who's critical to the team and who's not. So being a top performer is important, but then also being a team player is important too. So make sure that you're participating in internal meetings, maybe even going above and beyond your initial scope. That's going to give you like the most protection for sure. What's a good starting pay? So, good starting pay for the entry level role for a sales development representative, business development representative, it's about 60 to 100K. The highest offer that I've seen lately for an SDR is 110K. I would say that's pretty good for starting. Opinion on the technical account manager role as a first role in cloud sales. Um, So the role of the technical account manager is going to vary depending on the company. So, like in terms of what that actually means from a day-to-day perspective. When I was at Amazon, the technical account managers, they were more almost like on the support side. Um, So you had like your main account executives and account managers. Then your technical account managers, they were kind of like their like the main point of contact for any of like if there were any outages or any technical issues that came up. They were kind of like that first point of contact. They weren't necessarily in charge of like renewals or anything like that. But in some companies, technical account managers are more of like a frontline seller. So month one of ramp hit quota last week. Worried about next month's quota with the holidays. Ooh, yeah. So I mean, for sure. So next month's quota, right, with the holidays, you definitely have to take that into account. So if you know like what activity you needed to hit your quota for last month, you basically need to take that and you need to compress it down to about like 3 weeks, right? So if it was, for example, 40, I don't know, I'll just throw out like a random number, like 100 dials per week, right? And normally you would do 400 in a week to hit your quota. So next month, right, instead you're only going to have about 3 weeks. So you need to go ahead and do that 400 number in 3 weeks. So take basically adjust down or adjust up your activity metrics by about like 25% to make sure that you hit your number for December. Yeah, lots of questions. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. If there's any questions that you have that you really want me to answer and I haven't gotten to it, um, there is a subscription tier. It's like $4 or whatever, or $5 through TikTok that I was able to get signed up on. You get a little badge, and then I'll make sure to prioritize your question in the chat here. Stress level is an AE. So stress level varies, right? When you're hitting your number, when you're on track, it's pretty good. But if you're behind, and then your manager is constantly asking you about your pipeline and doing pipeline reviews and kind of starting to micromanage a bit, that's when it can get stressful for sure. So it really depends. I mean, it's kind of like the pros and the cons of the role. Where if you put up strong numbers, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you're putting up the numbers. But if you're not, that's when like the microscope's going to come out. You're 20, just broke into tech sales as a SDR, making 50K, 70K OTE, learning a lot though. Oh, that's awesome, man. That's a super solid starting salary. So congrats on that, Grizzly Adams. How would you navigate moving from SDR to product management? So that's a great question. Not an easy move to make by any means. In many organizations, the product managers are fairly technical. Actually, I started exploring that path when I was at Google, making the jump to a product manager route, but ran into some roadblocks where they wouldn't sponsor any internal movement within the Austin office because there were no product managers in Austin office, which was kind of frustrating. But then there was also I was going to have to do like some coding reviews, coding interviews as well. So it depends on the company. In some companies, you don't have to be as technical, but your best way to make that move is going to be to find some internal sponsors. So shadow some of the product managers at your company, see what they're doing from a day-to-day basis. Ask if they might have any like 20% projects or whatever that you can take on to show some aptitude, and so that way you can build some of those skills. And then also make sure you really understand what the internal transfer process looks like. Caleb, thanks for the sub. Currently at Salesforce as a SMB AE. 2022 has been a tough year, crazy tough. If it were you, where would you pivot? I mean, Salesforce is a pretty solid place to be, unless like you're not like, unless you're having a lot of difficulty hitting your quota. This time of year, in terms of like where the economy is going right now, in terms of the job situation, it's probably best to coast a little bit if you can, as opposed to like switching positions, unless it is like a dream position that comes up. So what you can do there is you can take more of like a passive approach to exploring new opportunities. You can check that box on LinkedIn saying that you're open to new opportunities, see what comes across your way, and if it ends up being like a better fit overall, then you can take it. But that's kind of what would be the pivot approach. But in a downturn, cloud is usually pretty secure. Cybersecurity is a good one as well. Yeah, 500 was with stocks, although it was mostly cash actually. Um, so that was when I was like still at Amazon, and Amazon is like a back weighted vesting schedule. So you get like 5% of your stock after year one, 15% after year two, and then 40% in year three and year four. So I got some like pretty good accelerators, which pushed me over that 500K mark. Thanks for your videos, man. Was able to transition in tech sales. That's awesome, man. Yeah, super glad to hear that. I get so many great messages from people and messages on Instagram saying like, "Hey, I was finally able to break in. Never knew that this industry existed." And that's what keeps me going with making content. Um, did slow down quite a bit over the past month. Both myself and my family, man, we were like the kids. We were like battling some sort of like sickness. Like lost my voice for like almost like a week. Not a lot of sleep, but I think I'm pretty much fully back to 100% right now. Totally forgot about the open to Opti's link on LinkedIn. They have us change our primary email. Might be a bit risky. Oh, they have you change. That's interesting that they make you change your primary email. So I'm guessing they're making you change it to a Salesforce email. Um, I probably wouldn't. I don't know how they even check that. I would still leave your primary email as your personal one, personally on LinkedIn. And if you do that open box, I mean, I pretty much have that like checked all the time. So, what does it mean to be a Sigma rep, and what does it mean to chase deals, and what to do instead? Yeah, so I mean, with that, I was kind of like playing on like the meme on like TikTok with like being a Sigma or whatever. Um, But in regards to sales, there are some like things that translate over, right? It's sometimes like people will try to like push deals longer than they should rather than just closing them out early. So one of the most effective things, or one thing that really effective reps do, is that they learn to qualify opportunities out early, right? So rather than just like pushing out that opportunity month by month as it approaches like the close date, um, you want to make sure you have a really good understanding of the buyer, of their business. Are they even like are they even going to buy the software or not? Because if they're not, then it's just wasting your time and your manager's time just to keep that within your pipeline. My AE from alignment aren't hitting numbers. How to help them while also hitting my BDR numbers? Great question. Yeah, so sometimes BDRs do get tracked based on like close rates or qualification rates. So curious what that means on your end. Is your AE not closing your opportunities, or are they just not marking them as qualified? If they're not marking them as qualified, I would say spend some time with them and get very clear feedback on why each leader, each opportunity is being marked as unqualified, and then use that information to like better fine tune your process, right? Um, that's usually what happens. What I've seen happen is sometimes like the BDR maybe or AE are they're just not aligned on like what a budget is actually supposed to look like or what a timeline is, or there's like some specific criteria, right? So get that feedback. Do it on a opportunity by opportunity basis. Then also don't be afraid to like follow up with the AE after you pass on the opportunity, and even like shadow it, even to the end of the deal and seeing where it closes, because it can be a great learning opportunity. What red flags should SDR BDR look for when joining startups? Ooh, there's a lot of red flags. Uh, but it kind of depends on like what you're looking for. If you want like a really fast-paced environment where you're going to have the opportunity to like work really hard and have potential like high potential upside, that's going to be very different than if you just want like more of like a stable 9 to 5 opportunity, which definitely exists out there. But in terms of like bigger red flags, if you want to join like a consistently good startup, you want to look for ones where the founders have started other startups before, so this isn't their first startup. You want to see if they're funded by tier one venture capital firms. That's going to show you that there's been a good amount of due diligence into the company. The tier one VCs are only going to be really investing in companies that they really think are going to do well. So that's like that's a good green flag to look for. And then a third one is going to be a red flag would be flat headcount growth or decreasing headcount growth, right? And then also look at like the trajectory of like their funding. Are they consistently growing in terms of like going from like their seed, Series A, Series B, or has it been like 6 years since their last round of funding and they've had a decrease in headcount? Parker Rice, can you check your LinkedIn sometime to see if you're job hoppy? Yeah, send me a message. I'll check it out. I've been meaning to do some specific. Maybe I'll do one of those next week. Do like a special like LinkedIn live stream review. Actually, now that I got like OBS access, I can do all these different like overlays. I could do like browser overlays, and this could actually make it a lot easier for me to do like LinkedIn reviews. So I might try to do one of those next week. What is your experience on equity-backed companies like Vista Equity Partners? So yeah, in terms of like equity-backed companies, they're going to have like pretty heavy growth expectations for the most part. There's going to be more like quarterly pressure versus like bootstrap companies or companies that are already public. There's a bunch of like other nuanced differences, but that's kind of like the main thing that I kind of picked up on. Also noticed that like at equity-backed companies that are still like in that growth phase, they're more likely to let off reps earlier versus later. Like at a big tech company, you really have to like screw up to get fired within the first year. Like they'll give you a lot of opportunities to improve, but I've seen reps get laid off or fired within like the first 2 months at a startup because the management just realized they were a mishire and they don't have the time or the money to spend, seeing if they're going to turn around or not. Is there somewhere to see the replays of the previous sessions? Yes, you can see them on YouTube. I have the YouTube linked in my bio. I have the last two lives from this one that I still need to upload, but I don't know, I think there's like 40 or 50 of these live streams that are re-uploaded. I also I was playing around with some other tools like Descript and Podcastle to add like live transcriptions to these lives. So that's what I'm trying to do with the other. So I'll do that with this one and the other ones. I want to do it where there'll be like a full transcription within like the link within the YouTube whatever description. So that way, when I repost this live, you don't have to like watch the whole 1 hour thing. Ideally, it should have like timestamps for whatever different questions and stuff. So working on that there. How many years in tech sales until you get above 300K? So to get to 300K, I would say usually it's going to be about like 4 to 6 years. So you'll be a BDR, SDR for 1 to 2 years. And within that role, you're making 60 to 100K. From there, you go to an SMB AE position or an inside sales representative position. In general, pretty much like at that early stage of your career, you could expect to be promoted every like 1 to 2 years. Depends on the company. In some cases, it might be like more like 2 to 3 years, but in general, it's about like 1 to 2 years if you're a solid performer and the company is growing. And then to get to the 300K mark, you need to get to the enterprise AE level. So at that level, 300K OTE is pretty standard. So 150K base, then your on-target commission is equal to your base salary. Great questions, everyone. If you're 19 looking to get in tech sales, what would you recommend doing? So if you want to just get in and you don't have a lot of like background knowledge within the industry, look at my like get into tech sales playlist. I have it listed on my TikTok profile. Then also go ahead and sign up for Tech Sales U. It's totally free, 5-week program, self-paced with some like peer graded assignments. And it was a course that I put together with Bravado. That's what we have, listed at the top right here, and basically goes over everything you need to know to get that entry level role, right? So going over what's the background of the tech sales, the tech industry, going over what do you actually do in tech sales, what do you do as an SDR, BDR, What are some of the basic inbound and outbound prospecting techniques? How do you build up a LinkedIn profile and a resume? How do you interview for these jobs? Do the negotiating and so on? Those are all topics that are covered within that course there. Thoughts on Trent Dressel getting put on PIP? Have you ever been put on PIP? Yeah, I did. I did see that. I have been on a PIP before. Actually, it was like my first. Actually, at the first like corporate role. Actually, ended up being like a really bad match with my manager, and I ended up getting like blocked from a promotion. This was when I was still like on the technical support side. So I don't know. This was like 2014. So I was put on a PIP, but then I easily exceeded everything that I needed to do in there and got taken off of it. And then moved into the sales role. So started as an SDR, and then got promoted within it was like 9 or 10 months, and became an AE at that company. So it worked out. In general, though, in most cases, if you get put on a PIP, the acronym that I like to say is, it's basically like a paid interview program. So you can still put in the effort and meet the deliverables. Sometimes the deliverables are reasonable. But in most cases, right, there's probably a reason why your performance wasn't that great in the first place. Maybe you just weren't that excited about the company, you weren't excited about the product, or maybe you didn't have like a great fit with your manager. There typically still is like some coaching before you get put on a PIP. So yeah, long story short, in general, start looking for other opportunities. Unless like you really think there's something that you can improve and make a turnaround case. There are people that, they get off of them. I mean, it does happen. But, in general, they put you on that because it's, they're basically building up HR documentation to prevent, any like unlawful termination lawsuits. How hard is it to be successful in the tech sales? Is all cold calling? I don't think it's really that hard to be successful in tech sales. It's all really about consistency for the most part. You don't need to be like a rock star seller or super smooth talker or anything. Really, there's a sales process. You just need to be consistent. You need to be efficient with your time. You need to be coachable. Take feedback from your manager and from peers. And if you could do all that, you can generally do pretty well. I think most people can do well. The consistency is probably where a lot of people struggle with. And it's not old cold calling. You'll be doing inbound prospecting, outbound prospecting. And as you move up, there's less cold calling that you do. Is Trent still on it? I'm not sure. I hopped on his like podcast. I don't know, when was it? Oh man, maybe it was like 6 months ago or something. And but I haven't like kept up with him or anything like that. Would you recommend dropping out of college to start tech sales or getting a degree first? It depends on like how far along you are within your degree. If you just have like a year left, it's probably you probably are better off just finishing it off. And then, but you can apply for other positions. And if you get another position, if you get a full-time position, then you could go ahead and evaluate whether or not it's worth finishing your degree or not. There was someone that I was talking to who he actually landed a full-time SDR position in his second year of college, and he dropped out because at that point he already had a 100K offer. It didn't really make sense for him to spend another two and a half years finishing his degree. So in general, usually for when I tell people who want to pivot, right, you don't need to like quit completely to make a pivot, right? Think about it from a risk management perspective. You have like the most leverage and the most protection when you're in a current position before you go ahead and leave. So so that goes to like leaving your job or leaving school or whatever. Like have things lined up, or even like creating your own startup, right? There's a reason why a lot of like successful founders, they would be working on their startup for several months or even over a year while still working at their old company, because you just want to make sure you have everything lined up before you go ahead and you make a big jump like that. Bro, do I work out? Yes, I do. Although, man, this past month I fell off just because was like sick pretty bad, and the kids were sick and stuff. But yeah, I do. I try to work out. 3 to 5 times a week. When it was warmer, now it's like cold in Chicago. I would like roller skate to do cardio like almost 5 times a week, and then try to lift like 3 days a week. Is being an SDR with 50K base, 100 or $1,000 quota and 2% variable worth it, or is it better? I'm not sure what the quota refers to there. How the hell did someone get a 100K offer without a college degree? It happens. I mean, that's pretty much like what like the top companies are paying. They're paying on that upper end. So usually the offers are between like 60 to 90K. But I have been seeing some companies, they've been offering 100, 110K, mostly because like they really want to incentivize and they want to keep these people for the long run, long haul, right? So what's interesting about tech sales in general as a career is that there's a lot of investment in the young reps, right? So they want to keep them, they want to promote them up into becoming an inside sales rep or becoming an account executive because they know they're going to perform well. They already know the sales process, they know the product well. So if you think about it from like a sales manager perspective, if you can get someone in and you can pay them top dollar, it might, yeah, sure, you're paying them maybe, 10 or 20K more than if you only paid them like 90K. But what you get in return potentially is significantly more than like that 20K, right? So they're going to be potentially a harder worker. They're not going to be distracted about pay. They're not going to be, tempted by other opportunities, right? So, oh, so John, so he said $1,000 quota and 2% variable worth it. Okay, so no matter what, if quota is only blah blah blah, you only get $1,000. So is that like monthly, I guess, for that quota, or is it quarterly? I mean, for like the base salary, it's not bad. I mean, the first job is like the hardest to get. So so sometimes it is better to get like a lower, I mean, so I guess in that case, it's not too bad, right? So that's like 62K OTE. The solar industry, it doesn't fully translate over to tech sales, but like the general like sales skills, prospecting skills will help you. It kind of depends on what your long term growth plans are, career growth or career growth aspirations. Google versus Amazon ad sales, key differences, advantages of each. So I assume you mean Google ad sales as well compared to Amazon ad sales. So two very different cultures. Um, Two different like ad platforms too, right? A lot of Amazon ad sales mostly is from like Amazon.com. I never have been in like the ad sales industry myself, but I've worked parallel. So I've been at Amazon, been at Google on the cloud side. So I did interface with some of the individuals on there. From what I heard, um, from what it seemed like there was a lot more pressure on the Amazon ad sales side. When I was at Google, it seemed like it was fairly relaxed. So the key differences, advantages of each, I would say like the probably the advantage with Google, right, is they don't have a lot of like the same competitive concerns that Amazon has. So there's probably a lot of retailers who don't necessarily want to advertise on Amazon because they don't want to support a competitor. I saw that a lot on the cloud side. How's company morale after Amazon fires? I'm not too sure. So, oh, you mean after like the layoffs and stuff at Amazon? So I left before all of that, but it's never fun. Layoffs for sure. In general though, what they usually end up happening with those layoffs at the big tech companies is they essentially kind of accelerate like the PIP process. So usually the people that end up getting laid off are the ones that they were gonna basically fire anyway, but they just kind of like accelerate the process a bit. That's at the big tech companies. At like startups, it can be a lot more drastic where they could lay off like half the company, which is what happened to me back in 2020. How's the job market for mid-level AEs? It's still pretty good. So for mid-level enterprise AEs, still like a good amount of job security. Even if you get like laid off or whatever, there's still companies that are going to be hiring for those roles. Is 85K base, 85K commission good for a first year AE getting promoted from SDR? Yeah, that's pretty good. Um, when you're doing like an internal promotion, you're typically not going to have like really big salary jumps. But I would say that's a 170K OTE is definitely pretty solid for AE promotion there. Bum, 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 bum. What advice would you give someone with no experience in sales getting into a startup as a first job? Yeah, so like I said, like the main thing that you want to get advice or what you want to look for is when you're joining like a first company or you're joining a startup as like your first job, is you want to ask questions about like what type of like training, mentorship, and support are you going to get. It's especially important as a new rep, right? Because you want to make sure you're building like these foundational skills and not like, because you want to think about this as a career, right? Not just like another job. Can you talk about customer success versus tech sales? Yep. So customer success falls within, I would say, the tech sales umbrella. So in general, you kind of have like two parts. There's pre-sales, and then there's post-sales. Pre-sales, obviously, everything up until the customer signs the contract. Post-sales is afterwards, right? So on the pre-sale side, you have the sales development representative, business development representative, and you have the account executive and the sales engineer. They're all working hand in hand to go ahead and close the deal. And then on the other end, you have the customer success managers. They're responsible for onboarding the customer, making sure that they're actually utilizing the product and they're being successful with it. And in some cases, responsible for renewals too. So, very different sales motions. One is more reactive and the other one is more proactive, right? So, the other difference too is in general you're going to have a lower earning potential on the customer success side, although you don't have as much like quota pressure. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Great questions, everyone. Man, what's crazy is I feel like I get like way less views using like the live stream feature, the OBS desktop streaming feature. So even though like it looks more crisp and clear here, I'm getting like significantly less viewers. Like last week, I think I had at one point it like capped out like 1,000 viewers, and then we had like 6,000 unique viewers over that hour, and now it's a little bit lower. But I think that's what happened last time. I had like OBS access to do the desktop streaming. I had it for like a couple of weeks, and they turned it off. And then the last couple streams, I just did it through the phone. So I think maybe what I'm going to do next for the next one is I'm going to just do the live streaming from my phone. But then I'll have the camera here recording, so that way I can go ahead and get a high quality capture, and then use that to repost on YouTube, I guess, afterwards. Maybe I'll end up doing that. Does speaking two languages have any advantage in tech sales? It depends. So it depends on what region you're covering. So if you're covering, let's say, Latin America, for example, then yeah, speaking Spanish and then speaking English definitely can be very valuable. And likewise, if you're covering, certain parts of like Asia, for example, being bilingual can definitely help. Other side hustles that I have, such as investments, sure. So, like the main ones right now definitely are like real estate. So, I have a couple rental properties based out in Austin, Texas. One of them, actually, or two of them, are supposed to be finished in the next month. So I'm excited to get those off the ground. And then was looking at doing some stuff in Chicago. Put that on hold. We'll see if I pick that up again. And then the other main side hustles are actually related to TikTok and social media. So I do consulting for a few different companies, and then various like brand partnerships. I used to do a lot more other side hustles, then I kind of toned it down a bit because it was spreading myself a bit too thin. But car flipping is one that I still like enjoy. I like going after high value, rare cars. I kind of have a knack for finding a good deal, and I get some personal enjoyment out of it. Let's see, what else have I done too? Oh, then yeah, stock investing. I kind of take more. Lately, I've been taking more of a passive approach, but I've done like active, short-term stock trading, doing options trading. Um, but in general, when I look at my stock investment portfolio, I'd say like 90% of it is like big tech companies or S&P 500 index funds. Then I have like 10% used for like discretionary investing. Bro, do you bant, bro? You got to bant. For people that don't know, budget, authority, need, and timeline. Do I do a lot of options trading? So I did quite a bit in 2020 when we just had that crazy market shift, right? We had that big dip in the stock market overall, made a good amount of money off of puts. And then, but I think like what happens with a lot of people when they do option trading is that they start increasing their positions. And then as soon as the market flips the other way, you can very easily erase a lot of your gains. But I still made, quite a bit there, learned to kind of, take returns on the way up. But it got to the point where it was getting a bit too distracting. Like I was making like more like short term plays that were higher risk, and you'd end up kind of being like glued at like opening hours and stuff. So the options trading that I do now is actually I do more of like I do leaps for like the bigger tech companies that I have a strong belief in. Why is the camera quality so good? Looks like a video game. So this is through my Sony A7S III, and it's streaming through OBS. So I'm doing the desktop streaming option. So it's essentially like a almost a cinema grade camera here. I think like this setup with like the lens is like $5,000 or something. So I would hope that it looks good. Can you make six figures as a BDR? Yes, you can make six figures as a BDR. I've seen companies offering as high as 110K OTE for SDR BDRs. And that's if you just hit your number. Of course, you can exceed. So even if you're not at that number OT, if you're at like a 90K OT, if you exceed your targets, yeah, you can hit six figures. Looks like Unreal Engine. Yeah, I also have like this like mist filter on there, which I think kind of gives a little bit of that effect. And then I forgot what LUT filter I'm using there, but man, there's like it's like a whole. I have a whole thing of just getting into hobbies a bit too deep, so I probably ended up like investing too much in this like setup. Do I work every day? What are my hours like? Yeah, usually it's usually Monday through Friday, and then my hours they vary, but usually I like to get started like 9 or 9:30, and then I try to wrap up by like 6 or 6:30. So I've kind of like shifted my day to be a little bit later, so that I can do more like family stuff like in the morning. What webcam do I use for Zoom calls? So I've actually been using my iPhone for Zoom calls lately. Sometimes I'll use this camera setup, and it actually works like really well for Zoom. But if you don't have like an expensive setup, actually your iPhone is like can be a really great Zoom camera option. So there's an app called Camo Studio, but they actually added this functionality natively within Macs nowadays too. But anyway, you either do that. It's called I think the continuity camera. But if you use that or Camo Studio, it lets you use your iPhone um, as a webcam, and the quality is actually like super super good. All you need is like a little phone mount to like mount it up, and then like a ring light or something, and you'd be impressed at like how good the quality comes out. Like it's almost comparable to this setup here. A lot of the other like webcams, so like I would say for a home setup, that's the one that I would go for. I've tried other webcams like in the $100 to $200 range, and honestly, I wasn't that impressed. The camera that you have like in a newer iPhone is going to be significantly better than any of those there. You need me to post the camera specs so I can mimic the setup. Yeah, I've done. I think I have like a camera setup video that I did, but I'm gonna do like an updated one because I did get some like additional tripods and different like mics. Like this is like one of my favorite microphones right now lately. It's Samsung Q2U, and what's great is that it's a dynamic microphone as opposed to like like the Yeti microphones. Those are like condenser microphones. This one has really good like natural noise rejection. So if I talk off to the side, for example, you could hear it's like a lot quieter. So it's great for like blocking out like a lot of background noise. And then you can connect it to your phone as well if you want to, USB. And this one I think was only like 40 or $50 or something like that. So great setup there. Yep, great questions, everyone. So I'm gonna be wrapping this up. If you guys haven't already, if you haven't checked it out, again, I'm gonna call it out again. Tech Sales U, totally free Tech Sales Bootcamp. There's a $100 deposit normally that's refunded once you complete the course, but if you use the code TechSalesTom, it completely waives that deposit. So if you're looking to get into tech sales, that's probably like my best recommendation. I've basically culminated all of the content that I've put out for the past 2 years into this course. It's super polished in terms of the content. Flew out to Los Angeles with the Bravado team, with Corporate Bro, and a few other folks. We were go ahead and we put together this great course. I got a lot of great positive feedback from it. So use that as a resource for sure. It's going to basically tell you everything you need to know from start to finish, to learning about the tech industry, to interviewing, to job negotiations or offer negotiations. And then if you're still stuck, look at my like Get Into Tech Sales playlist. I also have that on like TikTok. It's a great starting point. Am I hitting the loop tonight? No, not tonight. But yeah, yesterday I went to go see Young Gravy. Honestly, I wasn't too impressed with the show. That's why I ended up like buying this thing. But yeah, the mic, it's not a Samsung, it's a Samsung Q2U. I'll go ahead and put that in here. Samsung Q2U, and then the code is going to be TechSalesTom. And then this will be reposted on YouTube as well. Once I get all the transcriptions figured out, because I was like playing with some software, because I want to like really up the quality of my live stream recordings. So I think this one is going to turn out pretty good because it's coming from this camera, as opposed to when I save the live recordings from like the TikTok app, it kind of comes out a bit grainy. So you're going to revive the Discord? Yes, actually I am. I brought on a moderator to help out with all of like the security aspects, Joel, and I'm going to be connecting with them on Friday. Have like a whole plan in terms of like what I want to do with the community. I think there's still a lot of value there in the Discord community. Because the one thing with like TikTok, right, is like you can see in this chat here, it's great. We've got people like offering, help for other people, for referrals or recommendations or anything like that. So I want to keep like that alive within the Discord community. Yes, I'm in Chicago. You probably can't see it right now, but that's the Chicago Grant Park behind me there. Well, let me know if is this freezing for you guys, or is it just on my end? Actually, I think it's just on my end. I'm looking at it on my other phone, and then TikTok has like this like Live Center app or whatever to like view the stream. But man, some of this like stuff, I guess they're still working on it. They're not really they haven't really designed this app for desktop streaming, but I guess it's working out okay. Appreciate you. Thanks for everything you do. Yeah, happy to do it. Happy to do it for sure. Yeah, I just love that, just being like transparent and like helping out, where I can. I came across like a funny thread where there were some people that were like legitimately threatened by the advice that I was putting out, because they were worried that there were too many people that were going to come into tech sales and that were going to like ruin the career for them because it was going to like create too much competition. I think there's plenty of opportunity out there for everyone. I'm not sure where this like scarcity mindset came out, but How did you crush your targets? So really to like crush your targets in sales, you have to be strategic with your time. So it's one of those roles, especially when you get out of the SDR role and you become an AE, you can definitely like spin your wheels and spend a lot of time on non-productive activities that's not going to drive revenue, right? So you need to get a very good understanding of like what you need to do and focus on like your core competency on your role, right? So especially as an account executive, you're going to get pulled into a lot of different directions internally. Asking you to provide feedback on different processes or additional like trainings and so on. You really got to like take control of your time for sure. So learn to say no, protect your calendar, and then work backwards from your overall goal, right? So don't just enter the quarter wondering if you're going to hit quota or not. You should have a pretty good idea if you are or not, based on your prior performance and the activity you have. So if you know, for example, that based on your prior quarter, you need to generate 5 opportunities a week or whatever. I'm just throwing out like a random number. You need to basically work backwards from that number, figure out like, okay, well, if I want to get 5 opportunities a week, how many emails do I need to do per day? How many calls do I need to do per day? Like, what can I expect to get from an inbound perspective from my SDRs versus what I need to source myself? So that's the type of like thinking that you need to have to hit your number. Was I a dev before? No, I was never a dev. I worked on the tech support side, but my background was actually biomedical engineering. Originally wanted to go to medical school and decided not to go down that path. And then I've done like the sales engineer role, but I've never done like a professional software engineering role. Do you ever still make cold calls? Yes, still occasionally do, right? So even when you're an account executive, you're still going to have to prospect into accounts and kind of fill up your pipeline that way. What do sales engineers do? That is a great question. So sales engineers, they work hand in hand with the account executives. So when you're selling software, a lot of times the software is fairly complex, not just in the software itself, but in terms of like how customers are using it and getting an understanding of their environment. So think about like the account executive, they're kind of like the quarterback of the team. They're responsible for aligning all the different resources, keeping track of the deal, and then ultimately like, getting it to close, successfully. The sales engineers, they're very focused on the technical win of the deal, right? So they're going to be involved in the proof of concept or like a guided trial that a customer will do anywhere from like 2 to 3 weeks to make sure that the product actually fits their needs. They're going to be working hand in hand with the engineers on the customer side to talk through any technical questions that they have, to get a better understanding of their environment, to scope out what the actual implementation plan is going to be. So they're definitely more of those technical experts. They still get paid on a commission, but it's at a lower rate compared to the account executive. So it could definitely be a great role if you want to be more technical and you want to dive into those rabbit holes with the customer, but then still have like that sales exposure, right? So it's an interesting role for sure. Why do customer success get paid more than SDR? Really, it's based on like the level of the role. So usually SDR is fairly low level. So in corporate companies, they usually have like a defined leveling system, right? So at Google, the lowest level is level 3, and then you've got level 4, level 5 is like senior level, and then it goes up from there. So usually like the SDR roles, they're going to be entry level. So at Google, I think it was like level 3 or level 4. And then for customer success, it was level 4 or level 5, level 4 or level 5. And in general, your pay goes up as you move up the levels, and it's like the same between levels. So like if you're level 5 in marketing or level 5 in sales, your pay is going to be pretty close to the same. Thoughts on giving gifts? Would it be considered bribery? So every company has different policies on like gift giving, but for example, like if you're selling to a government customer or someone who works for the government, they usually will not accept any gifts at all, regardless of the value, because they do have like anti-bribery guidelines. But in general, if it's like $20 or less or $40 or less, usually it's not like a big deal, especially like if you're giving away something like a company branded like shirt or mug or something like that. That's okay in most cases. Or like you take the customer or prospect out to like a nice dinner or something like that to talk about, to talk about the opportunity. Like that's generally okay too. But I think gift giving, especially like if it's like small like swag items, it can be definitely like a great way to get the customer to actually respond to like your emails. Like if you're just not having any luck in terms of getting them to reach out via email or phone calls, then sometimes if you just give someone like a small swag item, they kind of feel inclined to at least like respond or acknowledge that. But great questions, everyone. So this was a great live. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is gonna be posted on YouTube, and check out Tech Sales U if you haven't already. It's in the bio. It's free. Use TechSalesTom. Completely waives the fully refundable deposit. The course will always be free. And if you have any other questions, best way to reach is either an Instagram DM or comment on my most recent video, even if it's like a non-related comment, non-related video. I try to respond to I try to look at my most recent video for like unanswered questions. So go ahead and post those questions there. Hopefully they can help out some other people too. But thanks everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your week, a great Thanksgiving, and enjoy the time with your families.